So in celebration of panning theBalm's Nude Dude Volume 2 palette, I kind of wanted to make a video on my thoughts of the shades individually, the palette as a whole, and then some of the things it kind of taught me with panning products on a go-forward basis. So yeah, here it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over the shades themselves. So the first one we have to talk about is Fearless. So Fearless is the all over lid shade that I kind of use. It's the lightest matte shade out of the whole entire collection, and personally for me, I was actually able to use this one to set concealer when I spot concealed. So I didn't wear foundation every day, but if I used a little concealer to cover up a blemish per se, I could use Fearless instead of using like a pressed foundation or a pressed powder per se to kind of set it, just because it did match my skin pretty well. Next we have the shade Fabulous. Fabulous is a really nice all over kind of highlighting shade, so you can use it on a brow bone, inner corner, cupid's bow, your cheekbones. I forgot all the things that you highlight there for a second. One thing I do want to point out, it does have a bit of a yellow tone to it, so it is going to be more of a warm toned highlighter. Next we have Flawless, and what was kind of nice about this shade is as much as it looks warm in the picture right here, it actually was a nice kind of neutral brown shade. So I used this to deepen my crease, but I actually could also use this one to kind of contour as well. Next we have Faithful, and Faithful I used as an all over lid shade, and sometimes I'd also use it kind of like at the tips of like my cheekbones to kind of add a little bit of depth to my highlight as well. I really did like this shade, but I will say out of all the shades in this palette, this is the one that went the fastest. So even though I use Flawless as a contour sometimes, I used Fearless to kind of like set things on my face, Faithful was the one that was gone the fastest. So when I say that, I mean I didn't touch the shade really at all, maybe like once or twice prior to actually focusing on it, and then it was gone within a month. So I use this shade almost every single day, and a month later it was gone. To me, that's not a lot of product, and I'll definitely talk about this a little bit later, but let's move on to the next shade. So next we're going to talk about Firm and Fit, and my opinions on these two are the same, which is why we're talking about them together. They did go on the eyes really nicely. They also blended out a little bit, so if you kind of wanted to buff the edges to soften them, like they're really easy to work with. They actually lasted quite a long time, but something about the colors themselves, even if you use the same shade the day prior to kind of blend it out or as a base underneath them, sometimes they went muddy, sometimes they were nice. It all just really depended on the day. So I didn't like the fact that it was so hit or miss if they looked nice or if they didn't. So with those two shades, it was kind of iffy if I liked them or not. Next we have Flirty, and this shade was kind of the same thing for me. I did use this one on my eyes a couple of times, but I also tried it as a blush topper. And depending what shade I used it on, sometimes it looked great. It would kind of melt in with my highlight, so it was like a nice kind of seamless transition between my blush and my highlight, like it looked beautiful. And other times it looked like I had a muddy splotch on my face. And even when I used it on my eyelid, I would use it as an all over lid shade if I was going more for like a pink tone look that day. And kind of like Firm and Fit, sometimes it would look muddy, sometimes it wouldn't. Like it was so hit or miss. So that one I'm kind of iffy about too. To get back to a good shade, next we have Feisty. I actually used Feisty sometimes to kind of deepen up my crease or to give it a little bit of pink tone, but I mainly used it as a blush, and it worked really well with my skin tone. So I really like that one. Next I'm going to move actually to Funny, Fierce, and Fine. And those three I ended up kind of depotting and then also turning into a Franken shadow as well. So I mixed them with some of the shades I had left over from my Shannon XO BH Cosmetics palette, which is my 18 and 2018 that I'm focusing on. So I won't go too much in detail about what I did with them now, but I did try them on their own first, and I did find they had a lot of fallout, they had a lot of kick up in the pen, and I found that you could pack on the color really nicely, but not a lot of glitter would, or you wouldn't get a lot of glitter payoff. So I found that you kind of had to build it up to get that nice color first, then put a little bit of glitter glue, then put another layer just to have that nice intense color with the pop of glitter. So quite honestly, I didn't like working with them as kind of like all over lid shades. I use them more just kind of like on the outer corner as a lid color, or sometimes I would use them as eyeliner for different types of looks. Fine is the best. I would actually say Fine and Fierce are the best for eyeliner shades, but I also did try Funny a couple of times just because you never know what turns out and what doesn't till you try. And then lastly is Friendly. What a name for a shitty shade. That just gave my thoughts or my opinions of it away. But this shade was the most difficult to work with. There was so much kick up, there was so much fallout, it was so patchy, it was so chalky. I did not get the shade to work once for me before I decided just to call it quits on it. So I used a dense brush and I tried it wet and dry before I called it quits. I also used a more like loosely packed brush, like more of a blending brush, and I used that again wet and dry just because, again, you never know unless you try. And nothing I did could get this shade to work. I even tried it as an eyeliner and it was still patchy, it was smudgy, there was so much fallout. It was just a mess to deal with this shade. And it sucks because in the pan it looks like this beautiful kind of deep plum color, but no, on the eyes it was just a mess. It was a frustrating mess. So that one went. So that's my thoughts on this palette. So as you can see, I liked 5 shades. I was kind of iffy about, how many would I say? I was kind of iffy about 3 of the shades. I was less enticed by 3 more of the shades. And yeah, I threw out 1. So saying that, this palette as a whole, unfortunately, I would say no. I would say it's definitely not worth the money, just because like the very light end neutrals were fun to play with, but there are a lot of other neutral palettes out there. But the other reason I'm saying no is now moving on to this. So when I went through Faithful so fast, I was like, did I use too much of it? Was there just not a lot there to begin with? And yeah, it was actually the latter of the two. So looking into this, I have some notes here that I'm going to reference for the next little bit, and that is this palette has a total of 9.6 grams for $50, which thus is $5.21 per gram. So it's like, okay, I have no idea what that means on its own, but stacked up to the Norvina Anastasia palette, that one has 10.36 grams for $55, and that one is $5.31 per gram. So I'm like, okay, it's cheaper than Anastasia, which in my opinion it should be. But then I put it up against the Naked Heat, which is $66 for the palette, but you get 15.6 grams, making it $4.23 a gram. So almost almost $1 cheaper than the Balm palette. But then we go to the Tarte Toasted palette, and that one is $49 and has a total of 18 grams in the whole palette, which makes it $2.67 a gram. So yeah, there is not a lot in this palette. It is actually the smallest palette out of all the ones I just mentioned, and it's the second most expensive. So for me, we buy the Balm here at a drugstore. So for it to have prices that kind of compare to things that you would buy at Sephora while you're getting it at the drugstore, to me that's not right. Especially for the fact that the palette is that small. And you saw from those pictures earlier, these pans look small, and they are. So that's just the reality of it. So yeah, so for only having 5 shades that I really liked, and for being so pricey for a small amount of product, this is a definite no for me. So yeah, that's unfortunately my thoughts on this palette. I can definitely say moving forward, I know that I need more lighter shades in my neutral palettes just because I did run out of Flawless and Fearless pretty quickly, and then you have to reach for other palettes to kind of complete your looks while you use up the rest of the shades. And the fact that there was 4 really dark shades in here, I definitely don't need that many. In the future, 1 will suffice, and maybe 2 for a little bit of added room to be creative with. So definitely not 4. 4 for me is personally too much, but those are my personal thoughts on what I would like in a palette, just from what I've kind of learned from using this and what went fast and what didn't. So yeah, that's everything I have to share with you today. I hope you found this helpful. If you're panning a palette right now, let me know down below which one it is, and I would love to subscribe so I can follow your journey. And if you panned a palette before, let me know your thoughts and any tips or tricks you have so the next palette that I work on will be even more successful. Thanks for checking in, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye!